Welcome to The Debate. Today, we are diving into really the core challenge of electric vehicle adoption, whether EV ownership is genuinely practical and, financially viable for the mass consumer. Not in the future, but right now. The technology is proven, but the market uptake, well, it remains hesitant.
And that hesitancy is critical, I think, because viability isn't just a technical question, is it? It's a matter of real-world access and, frankly, cost accessibility for the broad market. If the economics don't work for the average household, the whole transition just stalls.
The question is this: does the current cost structure of EV ownership, particularly when we talk about energy and infrastructure, does it currently deliver sufficient convenience and affordability to drive mass consumer adoption? My position is that for a significant and growing portion of consumers, the convenience and cost savings are already there. They're established, even legally protected, and it all centers around the ability to charge at home.
And I'm going to argue that the substantial upfront purchase price, compounded by the prohibitive cost and, let's be honest, the wildly uneven quality of public charging, fundamentally undermines any claim of true mass market affordability. It restricts adoption to an affluent niche that can absorb those kinds of external costs.
Okay, so when we discuss the advantages of EV ownership, we have to begin with the most impactful feature, which is charging at home. For anyone who has access to a private garage or parking spot, ownership transforms from this logistical puzzle into a simple routine benefit. You just eliminate the gas station entirely. This allows owners to fuel their vehicles using lower domestic energy rates, making the car basically a mobile device powered by households' electricity. And this efficiency, it immediately lowers the total cost of ownership, the TCO, which is projected to fall below that of internal combustion engine vehicles in most major European markets by 2030. And that's even without subsidies.
I see why you emphasize that domestic benefit, but let me offer a different perspective. That convenience is exclusive.
But that access is increasingly stable and is supported by law, particularly in countries with high-density living. If you take Italy, for example, there's legislative support like Legge 1342-2012 and DLGS 48-2020. They provide a guarantee. They affirm the right of any condo owner with a private parking spot to install a private charging station at their own expense. All it takes is a simple communication to the administrator. This is crucial in historic European city centers where, private garages are rare. This support de-risks the investment and secures that long-term convenience for people who might otherwise feel completely excluded.
That's a compelling point regarding the legal framework, I'll grant you that, but I would frame it very differently. The convenience you're describing is currently only available within a person's personal area. It's a benefit of private infrastructure. For the substantial majority who rely on street parking or shared public spaces, that fundamental advantage just evaporates. True mass adoption requires public charging costs to realistically approach those convenient domestic rates.
But we are seeing the industry push toward cost parity.
Paralysis in the market that we're seeing now. I'm sorry, I just don't buy that the technology is the bottleneck. Let me tell you why. If public charging prices were around, say, 30 cents per kilowatt hour, so near the domestic cost, analysts project that the market share of BEVs would jump from about 5% to 35% annually in just 6 months. That massive potential shift demonstrates empirically that price, specifically the cost of charging outside the home, is the primary block for the majority.
But the market needs time to adjust.
But that adjustment relies too heavily on what are, frankly, inefficient incentives. Look, if a government has to give a consumer a huge incentive, say 11,000 euros for scrapping an old vehicle, and that consumer then finds the EV inconvenient or just prohibitively expensive to operate publicly, what happens? They'll likely sell it after 2 years and buy a conventional car, effectively walking away with the subsidy. That system does not foster a lasting market transformation. The high consumer tipping point price, combined with expensive public charging, just proves the convenience model hasn't reached most people yet.
Okay, let's move directly to that, to the most recognized obstacle, the initial purchase price. I acknowledge this is the most significant psychological and financial hurdle for potential buyers today.
It's far beyond psychological. It is the financial reality driving consumer resistance. The high initial purchase price is, as you said, the most recognized obstacle. The average EV price right now is hovering around 55,000 euros in Europe. That price point significantly exceeds the average consumer's tipping point of approximately 36,000. That's a 19,000 euro gap. That is not something an average household can just absorb. And when you look at the comparative costs, the difference is just stark. A Renault Zoe at 33,000 euros is over 70% more expensive than a Clio. The Audi Q4 e-tron is roughly 28% more than a Q3. Until that initial cost of entry falls, the EV remains an aspirational luxury, not a mass-market appliance.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because it treats the current price gap as a fixed reality, and it ignores the clear trajectory of costs. The gap is real today, yes, but it is narrowing rapidly. Technological advancements and increased production scale are expected to drive down battery costs significantly by 2030. And you dismiss the role of government incentives, but they exist precisely to make the purchase viable now. Schemes like Germany's bonus of up to 9,000 euros or Italy's eco bonus of up to 6,000, they bridge a significant portion of that gap today. They make the purchase affordable for many consumers ready to transition.
They make it subsidized, yes, but those are temporary props. They're vulnerable to political shifts. They don't address the underlying cost structure.
But we also have to look at the external market pressure that is forcing permanent change. The competition from foreign manufacturers, specifically Chinese brands like MG, BYD, NIO, is accelerating this price correction faster than internal European development ever could. These companies benefit from massive vertical integration, from scale, and it allows them to offer models like the MG4 Electric starting near 30,000 euros that directly challenge European price points. This fierce competition is compelling European manufacturers to urgently reduce their own entry-level pricing to stay competitive. It's fundamentally and permanently driving the overall price down across the entire market.
Okay, while competition will eventually lower prices, let's turn our attention to the physical reality of inconvenience, the infrastructure. You cite TCO projections and falling costs, but those mean nothing if a driver can't reliably recharge outside their own garage. The infrastructure right now is limited, it's unevenly distributed, and often it's just too slow. It fundamentally negates the promise of convenience for travelers or the vast number of city dwellers without private charging.
I think that is often overstated, particularly the rate of growth.
The data suggests otherwise, and the geographic reality is damning to the convenience argument. Italy, a major European economy, currently ranks second to last in Europe for infrastructure density. Only 70 charging points per 100,000 inhabitants. You contrast that with the Netherlands, which boasts 104 points per 100 kilometers. And what's worse is the vast geographical disparity within countries. In Italy, 57% of stations are concentrated in the north, just 23% in the south. So if you live outside a major urban center or the economic north, the convenience argument, it just evaporates.
While geographic parity certainly needs continued investment, we do have to recognize the sheer pace of expansion. The number of charging points in Italy is set to increase by 36% by the end of 2024. This growth trajectory is rapidly alleviating the historical issue of range anxiety. And furthermore, the quality of new charging solutions dramatically improves convenience for long-distance travel.
But convenience is tied to time. We're talking about mass adoption. What about charging speed?
You're right, speed is critical. But look at the high-power networks. Ionity, the joint venture of BMW, VW, and Ford, and of course Tesla's supercharger network. These offer charging speeds up to 350 kilowatts. They're capable of adding hundreds of kilometers of range in the time it takes to grab a coffee. These systems are specifically designed to make long-distance travel viable and comparable to a quick fuel stop. They fundamentally address the inconvenience of older, slower public charging.
But those are the premium high-end networks, which, again, serve a niche. The reality for the average consumer is that only around 11% of public charging points across Europe are capable of fast charging, meaning a substantial charge in under an hour. And that 11% figure, it severely limits the practicality for mass travel, and it fuels that consumer anxiety.
We also have to address that anxiety about battery health, which undermines the long-term perceived convenience. Advances in battery management systems, BMS, and improved charging algorithms mean that modern lithium-ion batteries retain over 80% of their capacity after 8 to 10 years. This longevity is financially and practically reassuring. And manufacturers like Tesla and Nissan, they guarantee battery performance for 8 years or 160,000 kilometers. They guarantee at least 70% capacity. This isn't future tech. This long-term stability is firmly established in the current market.
Okay, the data on battery degradation is reassuring, but the underlying inconvenience for hesitant consumers persists, and this is precisely why we see such a significant role for alternative solutions, which the industry itself is promoting.
And this is precisely why we must celebrate the diverse range of available electrified models. This provides immediate, flexible solutions for consumers who are hesitant about a full BEV commitment right now. Plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, PHEVs, they offer the perfect transition. They provide significant CO2 reduction in electric mode while retaining the total flexibility of a combustion engine for longer journeys.
That sounds less like convenience and more like a technological compromise. You're carrying two powertrains to mask the deficiencies of one.
I'd say it's smart market accommodation that maximizes current utility. The electric range of 30 to 60 kilometers covers the daily commute for most European drivers, providing the zero-emission, low-cost convenience they want for daily life. The market success of models like the Jeep Wrangler 4xe PHEV, one of the best-selling plug-in hybrids, proves that consumers value this blend of daily convenience and freedom from range anxiety. And beyond the vehicles themselves, you have innovative business models emerging to reduce the financial burden, things like subscription services, Care by Volvo, for example, offering a low-risk, lower-commitment way to experience electric mobility without that huge upfront investment.
A reliance on hybrids or complex subscription services signals that the core technology, the pure BEV, is still failing the mass convenience and affordability test. If the proposition were truly viable, we wouldn't need to dilute the market with half measures. And this leads us back to fundamental doubts about the environmental convenience, which is supposed to be the entire point.
You're referring to the energy mix.
Exactly. Former FCA CEO Sergio Marchionne's concern remains valid. The transition risks being a double-edged sword because the electricity used for charging often comes from fossil fuels. Without comprehensive grid decarbonization, the environmental benefit of the EV is limited. And this is not just a systemic energy issue, it's a value proposition issue.
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. While the grid mix is imperfect, the energy source is constantly getting cleaner, whereas combustion engine emissions are, well, they're fixed.
But consumer skepticism is amplified when they consider this environmental trade-off. The local convenience of zero tailpipe emissions is offset by the environmental cost of battery production, high CO2 emissions, water acidification, heavy metal release during mining. For a skeptical buyer concerned about true environmental impact, this murky value proposition diminishes the perceived convenience and the moral justification of switching now.
We have established today that while those challenges persist, the foundational path toward affordability and convenience is it's accelerating. Legislative support for home charging is established for those with private access, offering immediate, undeniable financial and practical benefits. And the overall cost trajectory driven by technology and global competition suggests that for a growing segment of the market, the choice is already financially sound.
That limited convenience is real, I agree, but it's insufficient. True, broad market convenience and viability remain fundamentally contingent on external infrastructure and targeted policy interventions designed to reduce those prohibitively high public charging costs and bridge that significant €19,000 upfront price gap. Without resolving the cost and accessibility issues for the majority without private charging, the electric vehicle will continue to struggle to achieve that anticipated market boom.
This discussion really illuminates the difficult balance facing the industry, balancing these ambitious environmental targets with the economic realities of the mass market.
Indeed. The transformation of the automotive market is complex,
And understanding these divergent perspectives, what constitutes true convenience for the average driver, is essential for navigating the path ahead.
We thank our listeners for joining us on The Debate. We invite you to follow the channel for more discussions that illuminate different perspectives on complex material.